Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another comic class Minisode. That's right, a Minisode, the show every single week on this channel where I just discuss one book that you can find at your local comic book store right now. And normally, that book is a recommendation. It's a book that I love and I want everyone to check out. However, sometimes it's a book that I might not love, I might not want people to check out, but it's so big and so important that we need to talk about it. And this week, it's one of those. This week, we have to talk about Civil War II, issue number 3. Now this book was huge. It had a massive impact on a specific character. In fact, 2 specific characters in the Marvel Universe. And I feel like we need to discuss it in full spoiler talk. And I feel like I shouldn't just stand up here and give you some pre-constructed and written out speech about it. I feel like I just have to have an honest discussion with you guys. And you know what? This isn't the set for that. This isn't the set for spoiler talks and honest discussions. Come join me. Follow me. That's better. Hi everyone, welcome to my thinking couch. This is where I do the post geek out reaction on this show. And for anybody who is a longtime fan of this channel, first off, thank you. And secondly, you know that the post geek out reaction is a show that I do on this channel where I just discuss my open and honest feelings towards something from the world of geekery that I just experienced right after I ended up watching it. Typically it's a movie or a TV show, but today we're going to use this space to talk about a comic. Because I just got done reading Civil War II, number 3. I can never actually say Civil War II and then the issue number without trying to jumble them both together. So anyway, I just read Civil War III, issue number 2. And this is the big one that they've been promoting since this thing first started, in which they said a major character is going to die and someone on the other team is going to be the one that kills them. Yeah, and after reading this, I didn't really feel like standing up on my set and giving you guys some big speech and writing out a big review of it. I just kind of wanted to talk about it because these feelings are still pretty fresh in my mind. I just read this and I'm putting this up like right after the midnight release, so many of you just read it as well. Yeah, and alright, let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, if you guys have been watching this channel, you know that I was not a fan of Civil War II issue number 1 because I didn't feel like the characters were acting like themselves. I didn't feel like they were actually having discussions that they should have been having about any of this. I felt like it all just seemed way too forced in order to get these two sides to fight, and I felt like it was going to tear down a lot of good things in the Marvel Universe. And a lot of you guys contacted me after issue number 2 came out and you're like, oh man, if you hated issue number 1, you're going to absolutely despise issue 2. This one is so much worse. I read issue 2 and I was just like, whatever. Maybe I was already jaded to issue 1, but issue 2 I just read and I was like, man, it's just a big whatever. I really didn't care about it. Issue number 3 though, that's the one that's kind of breaking me on this. And at the moment on this channel, I'm making videos about all the new books that Marvel has coming up, and many of them look really cool, and I'm trying to be really excited for it. I'm trying to get you guys excited for it, because I know many of you are, and I'm trying to talk about the positives in there. But this one issue kind of just soured me to a lot of what Marvel's doing right now. By the way, for anybody who has not checked out Post Geek Out Reaction before, the thinking couch is right next to the open air window that lets you hear all the sounds of the street. So sorry if you hear the sound of a car driving by at some point. But yeah, this issue, alright, let me tell you guys what happens, because I don't feel like you guys need to go out there and buy this issue just to understand what happens. You should never go out there and buy a comic just because you want to know what happened. We live in the day and age in which you can just find out what happens from anybody on the internet. There are thousands of places that you can go to find out just what happens. Don't give a company your money because you feel like they are forcing you to just to find out what happens. In fact, that's one of my big problems with whenever Marvel said, oh, if you guys don't like this, you should stop reading it, because you keep telling us these things like, oh, we're going to kill off a major character in this issue. Of course people are going to buy that because they feel like they need to find out what happens. It's almost like you're holding that information hostage and they got to fork over their $4 or $5 in order to find out what happens. It's unfair, honestly. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys what happens. In the last issue, the Inhuman Ulysses, he had a vision that the Hulk, Bruce Banner, was going to Hulk out again and he was going to end up killing pretty much all the heroes. So they go and they confront him and they're telling him, hey, listen man, listen, we've had a vision, you're going to do something, and we want to take you in just to make sure that nothing happens. And Banner starts to freak out about it, and they ask him, okay, so what have you been doing? What have your experiments been? Why have you been in this secret lab? What have you been doing? And he then, well, he doesn't reveal it. Beast actually hacks into his system and discovers through that he's been injecting himself with dead gamma radiation cells. And they're like, why on earth would you be doing this to yourself? It's been almost a year since you hulked out. Why have you been doing this? And he's like, listen, this is why I haven't been hulking out. I've been doing these experiments. This is what's been keeping me from hulking out. You guys have to understand. And then he starts to panic, and the moment he starts to panic, Hawkeye shoots him with an arrow in the head and kills him. And that's it. And this entire issue is the trial of Hawkeye. And let me just go ahead and say, I've always said that to me, a writer starts to lose a lot of credibility and I start to like them less when I can see their tricks. When you start to look at certain things that they do repeatedly all throughout their series, and you start to go, okay, I'm starting to realize that you have a bag of tricks and this is what they are. And Bendis is totally one of those characters for me. He's totally one of those writers for me. He's one of those writers who I used to love. He used to be my favorite guy out there. But then slowly over time I started to go, you did this several times. And now you're doing this several times. And you never really do this even though you really should. And one of the things that absolutely just frustrates me so much about him and really kind of ended up souring me to a lot of what he does is that whenever he writes a big story, whether it's one of these big crossover events or even just a big climactic battle in one of his regular books, he always has the big moment, the thing that everybody's been looking forward to. He always has that be a flashback. He always has people tell you about that in a flashback, and in this is being told through a court scene. And it's like, that drives me nuts. That absolutely drives me nuts because no matter what happens, you know it wasn't that bad if everybody is standing around completely unbruised just discussing it, just talking about what happened. And yeah, this is a huge thing, but if we were actually there in that moment and it was happening live, we would have no idea what's happening. But because we see Tony Stark, we see Carol Danvers, both sitting there in a courtroom talking about what has happened, we're like, okay, clearly nothing that huge has happened. I mean, this is a huge thing, but whenever it goes to the flashback, you're like, well, I know everybody's gonna get out of this okay, except for like maybe a few people, but we know that nothing that dramatic has happened. So yeah, that's the first thing that I just have to point out, that I'm so tired of him doing that, and I wish that an editor would just step in and go, listen man, this doesn't work in every situation, and it's getting old. But okay, let's actually discuss what's happened. Listen, I'm a fan of Amadeus Cho as the Hulk, and actually I like that Bruce Banner isn't the Hulk anymore. I feel like Bruce Banner's story is one of those stories that it eventually needs to end, because that is the story of a man constantly in conflict with the monster inside of himself, and a story like that for so many years, you eventually have to have him either find a cure for that monster, find a way to live with that monster, find a way to deal with it, or you have to have the monster consume him. There is definitely an endpoint to that. There are many characters out there who their stories can go on forever and ever and ever, like Spider-Man. That is the story about a character who is growing and maturing as a person. that is something that never really ends. It can follow him all the way up until he's an old man. The Hulk, on the other hand, like I said, that is a constant struggle between two parts of that guy's brain, between two parts of his psyche. Eventually, you have to wrap up that story. So I was actually really glad to see him get cured, and I'm actually really enjoying Amadeus as the Hulk. He is totally different. He is a completely different figure, and it's refreshing, honestly. I'm enjoying him as that. And I love the fact that Amadeus cured him, because Amadeus was the Hulk's biggest fan. And this was like his gift to the Hulk by curing him. And in the last 2 issues of Totally Awesome Hulk, which that's still kind of a weird title for me to say, but the last 2 issues of that, it was basically the last days of Bruce Banner. Like, I knew Bruce was going to die. It was real obvious to me, because in those last 2 issues of Totally Awesome Hulk, it was like, hey, this is Bruce dealing with the fact that he's cured. He is a free man right now. And in the first issue, it was him still kind of dealing with the anger at himself for everything that he had done as the Hulk. But in the second issue, it was him going, you know what? It's finally time for me to live my life. I really, truly am not the Hulk. I fixed it. Well, I didn't fix it. Amadeus fixed it. He did it. My biggest fan out there saved me. And that is a huge thing, that somebody who actually cared about Bruce Banner actually came in and fixed him, because Bruce, the whole reason he was the Hulk was because he was damaged by people who were supposed to be close to him, by his father. And now somebody else who genuinely cared about him was the one who came in and saved him. It's like, that is a huge thing for his character, and it's honestly a perfect end to his story. And I would honestly recommend anybody who is a fan of Bruce Banner as the Hulk, go and check out that last issue, because, as I said, the last issue of Totally Awesome Hulk, it was all about him finally kind of coming to terms with, you know what? I can finally be at peace. Like, there was a moment that almost brought me to tears in that issue, in which he's at Amadeus' secret base, and he's there because he has a flu. He just hasn't had a flu in a decade because the Hulk's body rejects any diseases. And he's there with the flu, and he's like, oh my goodness, I just have to sit in bed and eat soup for a couple days. And he starts playing Minecraft. And he starts playing Minecraft, and like, they're talking to him about it, and he's just like, and they go, okay, so you're gonna build some houses so you can hunker down at night for when the creepies come out? And he goes, no, I like to play this on passive mode. It's like, wow, he doesn't want any conflict in his life anymore. He just wants a game where he goes around and builds things. And that's so peaceful. And he says, like, I'm trying to learn how to ride an ocelot in this game. It's like, wow. This is a guy who spent his entire, like, last 15 years of his life trying to find a way to not destroy everything around him, to not be angry so that somebody might not die because of him. And now he's finally just free to sit down and relax. Was an amazing thing to have happened to his character, and people are launching fireworks out my window right now. Thank you, that's great. 4th of July was a week ago. Anyway, what if I just hulked out right now and just jumped out that window to take care of it? But okay, going back to issue number 3, I fully understand, like I said, I fully understand that one of the 2 possible outcomes of Banner's story is he loses and he has a sad ending. And honestly, with the character arc that Banner has had over his life, I can fully understand that. And I can fully accept that happening to him. However, he didn't have that ending. They gave him the happy ending. They gave him the perfect happy ending in which he was finally cured and he can just be at peace. He can finally be at peace. And then to have this happen to him, but not just happen to him. It's not like he just died in an explosion. It's not like he just died because of some straight gunfire, or like some supervillain came in and was like, oh, you can't turn to the Hulk anymore? Well, here's some revenge, bam. To have it happen like this, in which he comes out and he says, this is why I haven't turned into the Hulk, because I've been experimenting on myself all this time. It's like, no, that is not what happened. That is flat out not what happened. And you're just making this up so that you have some kind of an excuse for why you can take Bruce Banner out. For some kind of excuse for why the cure might not work. for why it could not be a permanent cure, for why Bruce couldn't have peace, and why he might possibly turn to the Hulk again someday. You just flat out changed the thing that happened over in the other Hulk book, simply because it now works for your story. And the thing is, it now works for your story, but it doesn't work for Banner's story. As I said, he got an ending to his. He got an ending to his story over in the Totally Awesome Hulk book. And you just came in and went, yeah, no, forget that completely. This is what actually is going on. And I'm sorry, but this book is not good enough to do that. There are some books out there that are stunning. Some books out there that just really will cause your jaw to drop. And they can come in there and re-explain something, give you a secret meaning behind something. And then you go, oh, okay, well, that contradicts this other thing, but this one is so good, I'll accept it. This one is contradicting a far better book that was a far better ending to Banner's story. And they're doing it solely so that they can force these two teams against each other. Like I said, in issue number 1, I had a huge problem with the fact that... Jeez, man, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit passionate right here. I had a huge problem with the fact that the moment they find out this guy can read the future, you have Captain Marvel and Tony Stark instantly going at each other, and you could just feel the people in the writer's room forcing them to go up against each other. And then I read this, and I was like, you just completely broke apart the story that we got in that other book, the far better story that we got in that book, a story that was far better for Bruce Banner, a story that was far better for Amadeus Cho, and you did it just so that you can, again, get these two teams to go at each other. And by the way, I would just like to point out another problem that I have with Bendis is that he takes so freaking long for his stories to finally play out, and it didn't really hit me until the fact that it's like, okay, including issue 0, this thing is going to be 8 issues long, which means we are now halfway through this series. The sides haven't even really formed. Like, at the very end of this issue, they finally started to go, you know what, I think I can see what Tony's saying. Like, that was nuts to me that we are that far into this thing, and we still don't even have sides formed yet. But that's not what's really upsetting me about this book. What's really upsetting me is not that they destroyed one character. It's that they destroyed 2. And Bruce Banner, yeah, this feels like a pretty definite end to his story. I'm not going to say that he's never coming back, but this feels like one of those big, like, nah, it's going to be a long time before he comes back kind of situations, if he comes back at all. However, there is one character who he can't come back from this. He is forever changed, and it's Hawkeye. Because Hawkeye is a guy who, his entire character was always the guy who spoke truth to power and always would be the one to call someone out if a plan didn't smell right, if it was fishy, and if somebody was trying to basically, do something kind of like what Captain Marvel is doing, in which they are just taking too much control and they're kind of using power in the wrong way. He would be the one who stepped up. That was his entire defined character. He was always that guy who, whenever the higher-ups came in and said, this is the way it has to be, no matter how bad it looks, he was the guy who came in and said, that's a load of bullcrap, I'm not doing that, there is another way, and we're going to find it. That was his defining characteristic, and I never enjoyed Brian Michael Bendis' Avengers, and one of the things I never enjoyed about it was the fact that he never understood Hawkeye. And Hawkeye to me was probably my favorite Avenger growing up. Like, when I was a kid, a lot of people didn't know who the Avengers were back then, but when everybody who did know who they were was like, nah, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, they're the big ones, I was always like, Hawkeye. I'm on Team Hawkeye. He is the guy who I will totally follow, because he was that guy who would speak up when the higher-ups were screwing up. And in a situation like this is exactly the situation when he would stand up and be like, no, listen, I don't trust any of you guys. I am Swiss on this one. I am going to stand in the middle and call you both out on your problems. Instead, he's going far over to the right side of Captain Marvel on this one and saying, okay, They say that's what's going to happen. I will do whatever it takes to take out that bad guy. It's like, no, that's not Clint Barton in any way, shape, or form. And one of the things that I had a couple problems with Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye, but one of the things I did enjoy is when Hawkeye came out and said, I've never killed anyone, which I'm sure if I look back through all my old Avengers books, I'll probably find one moment where he probably did that. That wasn't a sentence. Did some like that. I probably would find a moment where he did kill someone, but I did like that they came out and said, like, listen, this is not Hawkeye. He is not that guy. Because, yeah, as I said, one of the things I love about Hawkeye is he was that guy who was always like, no, I will find a way to go the right route on this. And then seeing this, and seeing that he's the one who killed Banner, that's a permanent stain on his character. That is something that he will never be able to live down. I mean, it might be one of those things that nobody ever mentions again, but it's going to be part of his character. And as I said, Bendis just doesn't understand Hawkeye. And the moment that really sold me on that was in this issue when Banner came to him and said, listen, if anything ever happens to me, if it looks like I'm going to turn to the Hulk again, if it looks like I could be about to go off and put people in danger, I need you to put me down. And I will say, thank you, Carr, that was perfect timing. Like I said, sounds of Brooklyn, everyone. I like the thinking couch, but it doesn't mean we have to deal with that every now and again. But that actually was a good thing for Banner's character, because Banner is the kind of guy who would be like, listen, I don't want to be the Hulk again, and if it looks like I might turn to the Hulk again, I will trust someone to deal with me. Like, I can see Banner doing that. But going to Hawkeye and saying, I'm going to trust you to do this because you're the one guy who would eventually be able to live with himself with that. It's like, no, Hawkeye would not be able to live with himself with that. That is the one thing that would haunt him forever. And that's something that any fan of Hawkeye should know. And as I said, Ben has never understood Hawkeye, because he just had him be whatever he needed him to be for that moment. You know, some scenes he was like some Mimbo who just slept around with anybody on Avengers property, and that, again, not Hawkeye. But also, other times he had him be like a dark, military-style vigilante character who just took care of business no matter what. And it's like, no, that's getting into Punisher territory. Definitely not Hawkeye. But yeah, they completely misinterpreted Hawkeye on this. They turned him into something that he wasn't, and because of that, he has now done something that he can't live down. He has done something that will always be part of his character. And I can't see him going back to being that character that I always loved after he's done something like this. Like, for anybody who was a fan of the Matt Fraction Hawkeye series, can you honestly see him and Kate Bishop just palling around in his apartment after he did something like this? For anybody who was a fan of him in the old West Coast Avengers days, can you see him leading a team of Avengers now after he just murdered a founding member? It really just frustrates me so much to know that one of my favorite characters, he's gone now. He'll be there. He'll be standing there in his Arrow t-shirt with that bow and arrow, but the stuff that made him who he was, this is one of those defining moments that forever makes it so I look at him and go, yeah, you're not him. You, in the defining moment, that moment where your character and what we love about you should have stepped up, you were totally not that in every way. And from there we see that Captain Marvel has been using Ulysses for weeks now to go out there and stop numerous supervillains, and it's like, okay, it's good that you're using this to stop supervillains, but you're doing it in kind of like a 1984, we will know everything about you and it's for your own safety kind of way, and like, that just turns me off. And then you've got Iron Man, who kind of has a point, but at the same time he's acting like a total jerk again, like he's going and kidnapping Ulysses. And it all comes down to the big twist at the end where it's like, okay, we've now figured out how his future powers work, and we're going to try and, break that down. And it's like, okay, so this is going to prove to be some kind of a problem with Carol's plan. And it's just one of those situations in which it's not like the Registration Act, Where the Registration Act, it was like, we are coming to you no matter what, and you have to sign this or you're going to jail. So I was like, okay, I have to choose a side in this situation. And even though Iron Man back then was acting like a total jerk, you could kind of look at his argument and be like, well, I think I can see some of the merits in what you're saying, but I can see what Cap is saying too. And of course, Cap back then was acting way nicer than Iron Man was, so it was like, okay, I can kind of choose a side on this one. In this one, again, the big question is, whose side are you on? But the problem is that both sides are acting like jerks. And if I was just a regular superhero in the Marvel Universe, I wouldn't have to join a side. I could go out there and just keep living my life as normal. You really only have to pick a side if they both came to you, and both of them have such messed up arguments. And both of them just acting like such asses during this. And I'm like, I'm on nobody's side. I don't want to pick a side in this. And to me, the fact that halfway through this storyline, where we're supposed to be picking a side, I don't care at all about either of their storylines. I don't care who's right. That's a huge failing of this book. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I'm sure at the same time, other people completely disagree, and that's totally fine. I know a lot of people out there who have been enjoying Civil War, and if you have been enjoying it, then great. I'm glad that you have that. I'm never going to try and take anything away from you, but the whole point of this channel is to kind of share the feelings that we have about these geeky subjects. And this is one of those issues that it just really hit me hard. Every now and again, there is a comic that will come out that will just cause your stomach to sink, but not for the right reasons. Like, I know that somewhere out there someone's going, is like, oh, well, you're getting all depressed over this simply because, these characters died and, it's a big dark turn of events and you're supposed to feel sad about that. It's like, no, I'm not feeling sad because that's what happened. I'm feeling sad because I don't feel like this was a good story and they sacrificed so much of these characters for something that should have been way better. Like, if you are going to kill off a founding Avenger and completely forever, I cannot stress that enough, Hawkeye's character is permanently changed because of this. Even if he goes back to being the character that he always was, that is something that you will look at him forever as like, yeah, you're the guy who did that. So if you're going to permanently change that about these characters, it needs to be something that feels like it is for much more than simply going, hey, remember Civil War? Buy our comic. And that's the feeling I get from this. Let me know in the comments. As I said, this was just an open, honest discussion because with an issue like this, that's all I can do. I just had things I had to get off my chest, things I had to discuss. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments down below how you felt about this issue. I'm sure there are a ton of people who disagree with me about this. And again, I'm sorry for rambling. That tends to happen whenever I don't have a script to follow. But yeah, man, I just had real solid emotions about this, and I just want to get them out there. So thank you guys very much, and come back later today for the regular comic class episode, which I promise you is going to be way more polished and probably a lot more upbeat. So thank you guys, and come back next time. I need a box of tissues to cry into, and a pint of ice cream, and some really good Hawkeye books from before all this happened.